So I am really excited to introduce Amanda LaMott to all of you and the great organization that she works with called LTAC. And LTAC works with local highway districts. Amanda will explain in more detail, but I've worked with LTAC now for several years. We worked on the Children Pedestrian Safety Program, and we also partner with her on the TAP program. And LTAC really does care about rural communities in a big way, and they want them to be healthy. They want them to be livable. And I'm gonna let Amanda talk in more detail about that. She's an engineer and she's a mom with 2 young boys. So I think she represents what we all care about really well. Amanda, let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, let me share my screen. I think we practiced it, so hopefully this works. Can everyone see my slide? Awesome. So I did not include a slide on who LTAC is. A lot of the times we give these presentations and many people know who we are. And then I was just doing a run through with Sarah and Cynthia, and there's a really diverse group here. So I'm just gonna give a quick overview. We were created in 1994 by the legislature to help advocate for local jurisdictions. All the federal funds for local cities, counties, and highway districts are given out through grants through LTAC. We have grown in size quite a bit from 1 or 2 employees in 1994 to about 26 today. We do programs for safety, for rural, specifically for urban. We have a bridge program. We are all about those federal funds as well, but then we haven't forgotten our roots in technical assistance. So a lot of what we do is answering calls from any of you, cities, counties, highway districts, nonprofits, people like Cynthia, you know, all sorts of people, and just helping talk through any of their transportation needs, whether that's for cars, for bikes, for funding, shooting off ideas. So we're kind of a little bit of everything. Today, Cynthia asked me if I would go through some of our programs that really focus on walking and biking. So I did a quick think about what do we offer, and these are the types of things we're going to talk about. So we have a LRHIP program. There's going to be so many acronyms. So if you ever have a question on what an acronym is, I'll try not to use those or explain them, but we have LRHIP, which is Local Rural Highway Investment Program. We have LSIP, like Local Highway Safety Improvements Program. We have group signs, that's part of LSIP. The transportation alternatives that Cynthia is a part of is TAP. Then we also have a loaner program where we loan out lots of different types of equipment, including bike and ped counters, and then just overall technical assistance. So this is the ride we're in for today. Let's take it. So first I'm gonna start with LRHIP, and you can see the big word here is rural. This has to be focused on rural jurisdictions. It was established in 2004 through the Idaho Transportation Board. And basically what we do is we take federal dollars that we get from DC and we exchange it to them for local dollars. There's a lot of red flags that come with using federal dollars. You know, there's a lot more hoops to jump through. So because we don't get any of that, we exchange it with ITD so that we have some different programs that we can use state funds. Layla Krall runs this program, and for many, many years since it was established in 2004, we were exchanging at 60 cents on the dollar. So we would give them $1 of federal funds and only get 60 cents of state funds back. And just recently, we were able to renegotiate that up to 80 cents on the dollar. So we're able to offer a lot more funding for the programs that were already incredibly competitive. So we funded a small fraction of the applications we got for this program, and now we'll be able to offer a little bit more. So that means we get about $4 million of state funds. We exchange $5 million. Again, rural jurisdictions only. It cannot be used to pay for work done. So I'll go through that on the next slide. And here's the website. It's on our website. There's a special page just for LRHIP. It's easier to say these are the jurisdictions that are not eligible versus listing all of the entities in Idaho that are eligible. So it's based on the census, and if you're in an urbanized area, then you cannot qualify for LRHIP. So if your jurisdiction that you work for, you're interested in is listed here, then you aren't eligible for these funds, but everyone else is. And we'll update this with the new census that'll come out pretty soon. But there's 4 types of things you can do with LRHIP. We fund construction projects, sign projects, we fund transportation plans, and emergency projects. So we'll start with construction. That's most of the funds. Construction's pretty expensive. You need a decent chunk of money. We offer up to $100,000 for each grant to get anything done. Like I said on the last slide, you can't pay yourself. You can do the work with your own forces. So if you have the equipment and you have the manpower to do it, you can stretch your grants so that it just pays for materials if you want to do it yourself. Typically, this is for roadway construction. That's what a lot of them are for. However, you can add bike ped improvements to it. So I put it in here as an asterisk. It can't be exclusively a bike ped project. It can't go just put bike lanes in somewhere. And that's based on the restrictions of the funding. But if your local jurisdiction applied for a roadway rehab and they wanted to add sidewalks or add bike lanes, that is eligible as part of the whole package. Any questions on that so far? Okay, there's a lot of words on this slide. So that's one way to get bike improvements in, work it in with another.
I have a question. This is Don. Who made up the rule that it can't be standalone bike or pedestrian?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Layla, are you on the call? I thought I saw you pop on.
I am on. Sorry, I was hoping that I could just be a listener today, but I'm happy to help answer any questions, especially about the LRHIP program. So LRHIP is an exchange of federal aid funds, and the federal aid funds are used for highway projects. So we try to align with the way that program is utilized on the rest of the local system. So the rest of the local federal aid funds are used similarly. Only the federal TAP money do we allow for standalone bike ped projects.
That's not a federal rule.
No, but it's how we use the federal funds in Idaho.
So who made that decision?
We'd probably have to go back to people who existed before me. Kind of like ITD, I would say. They only use their federal funds for roadway projects. While they'll include other aspects, it's really focused on roadway. We just kind of followed in line with that. Similarly, they just use the TAP as their money for standalone bike ped projects.
So LTAC could change those rules?
I could look into the rules. I would not want to say for sure that we could. And then we have a council. Amanda kind of mentioned at the beginning that we didn't get into all about LTAC, but we are governed by a council, so our council would have to take that upon themselves to change the rules.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping in, Layla. I'm doing my best at all these. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, so that's about the construction quadrant of the LRHIP funds. We also do sign grants, about $30,000 max. That buys a lot of signs though, guys. So for even 5,000, you could fund a lot of signs. These are focused mostly on MUTCD, the manual and uniform traffic control devices, and regulatory signs. So it is scored based on the percentage of signs in your application that are those types of signs. But wayfinding, this was something Cynthia asked about, wayfinding signs and school signs are eligible. So if you wanted to do a mix of signs in your whole area, it would apply for all types of signs. So that's one way to get sign funding for bike ped. You just have to improve other types of signs in your area as well. Transportation plans, we have offered this for quite a while, and at first it was only funding new transportation plans. However, as we've been able to fund a lot of jurisdictions, we're finding that a lot of the jurisdictions have a plan and are now ready for an update. They really only have a shelf life of up to 10 years. After that, it really should be looked at again to make sure that all of the recommendations and the projects that were recommended in that plan, if they were completed already, to take those off and then reevaluate, are those your priority roads again and routes. And one thing that's highlighted in there is we do require the consultant who puts those together to work with the bike ped community, because these transportation plans are used in a lot of our other grants. You know, we say, does this project that you're applying for, is it supported by your transportation plan? You know, have you put thought into where you want these improvements to go so that it's a planned effort? It's not just a random shot in the dark of where, you know, where you want an improvement. So that's something that to consider working with those consultants that are redoing or updating a transportation plan, that they have been required to reach out to all of you when they're making those plans. And finally, there's emergency funds set aside for things that are unpredictable, like floods or, you know, whatever it is, something that happens. Some common thing is, you know, bridge collapsed because we had a massive flood and it's a priority route with no other access. So those are the types of things that people can apply for emergency funds. There's not a set amount given out every year. We tend to build a little reserve so that when we do have crazy years, there's some money to help pay for those. But those are the 4 types of funding that we offer with LRHIP at this time.
Amanda, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I noticed that you have, there is a match required for the construction projects. Are communities required to pay any sort of match for any of these other things that you offer? No. Okay.
No, signs are free. Transportation plans is paid for. The way they make it fair is you can only win, or you can only apply for one type of grant a year. So if you put in an application for construction, you can't put in an application for any of the other 3 kinds. And then you have to wait a year. If you're successful in getting a construction project funded, then you would be ineligible the next year. And hopefully that helps spread it out. But construction, because it is the most competitive and takes up the most amount of the funds, there is a match required.
And is that the 7.34%?
Not sure I know that.
Okay.
I'll jump in again,
Thank you.
Amanda. So there actually isn't match required for any LRHIP funds. What we have is funds for federal aid construction match. So for many of our really small rural communities, if they do get a federal aid construction project, it might be $2.5 million of construction. That amount of match would be more than their entire budget for the year. So we offer a grant to help the communities that don't have the financial resources pay their federal aid match. So no fault of Amanda's here. I didn't clear that up with her this morning. None of the LRHIP funds require a match. They are all all grant funds.
Great. Thanks. Lola.
Sarah, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think the construction and signs and transportation plans are fairly straightforward. Maybe I missed it, but what would be something that would be that would fall under the emergency category? Like, can you give an example of how that?
Like a natural disaster. The year we had all the crazy snow and it, you know, we had years with, it's usually a natural disaster, like a flood or something like that. It can't be delayed maintenance or deferred maintenance. If you just don't maintain your bridge, or if you don't do something and it gets worse and worse and worse and then fails, that wouldn't be necessarily considered emergency. Emergency is that's the only route to get to a certain farm or home or something like that.
Does our current situation count as an emergency?
I think it has to be infrastructure. So if there would have to be an infrastructure need for emergency.
Yeah, so we
While
just,
this is still a disaster.
on the last, we just had our last council meeting on Friday, and we took up 2 emergency applications that day. One was for a bridge in Camas County that burned when they had that lightning storm in July, I want to say, and the bridge was completely destroyed from that fire. The other application the council heard was for a bridge in Shoshone County up north, where they've had extremely large loads, larger loads than anticipated crossing the bridge, still legal loads. And the council decided that was a maintenance issue. They knew that was happening for a while and they wanted assistance resurfacing the deck. So they looked at that as maintenance. So just 2 really recent examples of emergency funds that or emergency applications they considered. Others, often in Idaho, it tends to be after large storm events in the spring. So a rain on snow storm event that causes bridges or culverts to fail and therefore roads to wash out. Others have been funded. Those are just probably the most common type that we see here in Idaho. And what we do with those is we call them local emergencies. So it's when the governor has not declared an emergency in that area and other federal funds are unavailable. We try to help the locals out with those funds. So a small storm, or a large storm in a small area that doesn't quite get governor or presidential attention is where those funds have been used historically.
But exclusively infrastructure, Layla?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that help? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Good deal. Okay, so if you want more information, you can go back and see all of the LRHIP awards from the past X number of years. They're all on our website. So that is all there. We have a new application up that just got posted after our September council meeting. So if you are interested in applying for one of these grants, that application is out there. You do have to have a roadway jurisdiction. So if you're a specialty group and you're interested in a certain road in your area, we encourage you to partner with whoever owns the road there. You cannot apply if you're a nonprofit and you don't have jurisdiction over that roadway, but we are really interested in helping you develop partnerships and making those connections if you need help with that. So this is just a screenshot from our website. And Layla's on the call, so thank you for jumping in like 3 times there, but she is the guru for LRHIP. So reach out to her if you have more questions on this program. Okay, group signs. This is a very, very small piece of our safety program. Back in the day, before Layla was at LHTAC, I think like 8-10 years ago, all of the federal safety funding went to the Idaho Transportation Department. And it more or less got spent on all of ITD routes. And a couple years ago, LTAC worked with ITD to get a split. You know, we really think some of that money, you know, a lot of these crashes happen on the local roads. So some of the safety money really should be dedicated for improving safety on local roads. So that split happened a few years ago, and just I think last year or 2 years ago, the number increased that went to, I think we doubled or tripled the amount of money. We now get about $8 million a year for local safety improvements. And one feature or one program that we fund out of that $8 million every year is for group signs. We spend about $250,000 to $300,000 a year. It's not a set number. It's based on how many people apply, but it's for improving signage in your jurisdiction that needs to be upgraded based on a fatality or a injury A. And so they call those qualifying crashes. So if your area has any qualifying crash, a fatality or a serious injury, you are eligible to apply for all of safety funding, but specifically this signs program. And the great thing about this is it's free. You know, there's not a lot of things that are free, no match. This is one of those. So you get free signs. I did talk to Kevin. He is our safety manager. And just to clarify everything, wayfinding signs are allowed, but you have to be able to justify a safety improvement with it. So first off, you have to have a qualifying crash. If you do, one of the signs has to mitigate that crash. For example, if you had a car go off the road at a curve, and they had a qualifying crash, then you could apply for a bunch of signs, including that location. So location A where the crash was, plus 30 other curves in your area, or wayfinding. You know, you can do a bundle as long as you have a qualifying crash. So the more MUTSIT and regulatory signs you have, the higher likelihood that you'll get funded. But you know, we don't get a ton of these applications every year. So far, I think almost every year we fund all of the applications that get put in. So there's a really good chance of getting free signs if you put in some effort. You know, we have a crash map on our website where you can go see, you know, sort by your jurisdiction or by your specialty area and see where the crashes are, and then put in a request for a bundle. Again, feel free to partner with your local road jurisdiction. If you are a nonprofit group, they are allowed to do as many applications for safety as they want. They are not limited like LRHIP, where they have to choose one type. They can put in an unlimited number of applications. And again, $250,000 to $300,000 buys a lot of signs. LTAC bundles all these together. So what we do is all the people that apply statewide, LTAC puts the design package together. Really, it's just a list of all the signs and locations, and we advertise it. LTAC, it's the only thing that LTAC advertises, and we award the project, and it's basically a drop. They deliver it to your jurisdiction, and you're responsible for installing the sign. And we just ask for you to send us a picture once you're all done, once it's installed, send us a picture to prove that it was installed, and the project's closed out. So it's free, it's very low touch for us. It's pretty awesome. And we do, I don't know, 6 or 7 jurisdictions every year on average. Any questions on signs before we go on? Okay, TAP. Oh, wait, Deborah, you might have one.
Why is it necessary for us to have a fatality before? I don't understand this concept at all. I mean, usually you have common sense tells you if something is unsafe. That's why our kids are not on the streets in our neighborhood. But why does it need to have a child die first before you get, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of schools of thought. You know, there's following a crash. You know, was it unsafe? Was it any more or less unsafe before there was a crash or after? You know, it's sort of nebulous, but the funding that it comes from, HCIP, is very regulated. It's federal funds. And in order to qualify that, just to make sure that you focus the safety improvements on areas that are have data driving that it's an unsafe location, that's how they determine where that funding is going. So because it's coming from that HCIP pot of money, we still have to follow those rules. So even though it's signs and it seems very basic, we still have to follow the umbrella up to the program that the funding is coming from. So it's, and they're trying to get to toward zero deaths. So they're trying to really target locations where we have serious actually injuries and fatalities. So it's not saying that because there isn't a fatality doesn't mean that it's safe, but we'll have to find other funding sources. It just can't be this funding source. Does that help a little bit, Deborah? I hope. I know it doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
I could just clarify, HCIP does require a data-driven process, but the federal program rules do not require a fatality or serious injury. I'm looking at the program rules
Okay.
right now. So again, that's an Idaho thing applied over and above what the feds say.
This is Layla. I'll hop in again too. So you are right, Don, that that the federal umbrella is a little looser, but whatever system or process we use to apply the data-driven process does have to be approved by FHWA. So in the past, I'll just use that term, some projects were funded that had no data to support them. And our Federal Highway Division, I think I saw Lisa on here. I don't know if she still is, but it was before Lisa even, Lisa Appleby. They looked at the process and they really pushed back. And these weren't our projects, I'll just say it that way. They pushed back and said, you need to have a process if you're gonna award these funds. So when we started getting local money for this, we met with FHWA and said, what do you think would be the best way to meet the process of a data-driven analysis? And what we have good data on in Idaho is the crash data. So from a fatality all the way down to property damage only, we have pretty robust data, and it's really gotten stronger the past few years with some of the resources the state is doing with the police. In other states where they are a little more flexible, they use a lot of predictive analysis. And for that, we need to have a lot better roadway data to apply that predictive analysis. So they would look at 2-lane roads, undivided highways with markings, and then start looking at different angles of the curves, different curve radiuses, and start drilling down on that where the highest amount of those type of crashes are occurring. And so that's the predictive analysis that some other states are using to not address the locations of fatal and serious injury crashes. We do not have that roadway data in Idaho. We don't have it on the local system really at all. You know, ACHD has robust data, but when you get outside of ACHD, that data really drops off. So our way of doing at LTAC for the local road system of using some predictive analysis is to allow systemic improvements. So we can take a location that has a fatal or serious injury crash at it and then look at like locations in that jurisdiction. So we've done that quite a bit in our program. I'll use guardrail as an example, where a curve in a local jurisdiction had a fatality. And that curve is on this 2-lane road or a 2-lane road without guardrail. So then we'll look at other locations that are 2-lane roads without guardrail on those curves and apply that improvement at those other locations. So that is one way of using the data to support improvements away from that single location. But it still does have to be data driven. And this is the process that we have gotten approved through Federal Highway. And so far they have seemed to be very supportive of. The application for that program too is on our website, so you can see it's a fillable Excel form with some data, with some formulas plugged in behind the scenes, but really it's based on the type of improvement, the crash reduction factor, the cost of that improvement, and then the amount of crashes at that location or in your location, collective locations that you're applying for. And as I'm sure you're aware, Don, you know, the different types of crashes carry different dollar values. And so that's how that formula works for the data-driven analysis on the local system.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Don?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So like Layla said, you can apply for one. We do allow that to be expanded across the whole jurisdiction. So as long as you have one qualifying crash or one improvement, you can then do systemic improvements throughout your jurisdiction. But this is another way to get signs funded. If you're not a rural agency, because LRHIP was only for rural, HSIP is any jurisdiction is eligible to apply for that. So the urbans would be able to look into this. So now we have the TAP program. This is the only dedicated infrastructure program that we have in the state for bike and ped only projects. The biggest way that I describe it is it's for any kind of transportation that's not for cars. You know, when I get a lot of calls asking me, would this qualify or would that? And really just do a gut check. Is this gonna improve the transportation for you and your car? And if it's a yes or a gray area, then it's probably not eligible. We do all sorts of projects. It's very competitive. As LTAC got involved, when I got hired at LTAC about 3 years ago, we've seen the number of applications double and triple for this every application cycle. We go out for applications every other year. So we had applications submitted last year and we funded 3 years worth of projects for that. It is federal funds. So we usually accept applications for funding 2 to 3 years out. So the projects that just made it into the program won't have construction till 2021, 2022, and 2023. So we fill out quite far in advance. But these projects can range anywhere from sidewalk improvements. They can be undercrossings for bridges. They can be connectivity for pathways. Really any type of infrastructure that helps people get to and from work, to and from schools, or get them to commute via bike or walk instead of taking their car. So these are the types of projects that do well. It also funds safe routes to school education. So a small amount of the funding gets set aside to pay for people in schools to help teach how to be safe while you're biking on the street. And we have, I don't know, probably 10 of those, Cynthia might know better, across the state, in a lot in Ada County. You know, there's a hub here, but we've got a really good presence in Moscow, really good presence kind of up and coming in Idaho Falls area. So that's growing in the state, and we help fund those staff members in the schools. There is a match for these projects. It does have quite a large dollar amount. You can have up to $500,000 to do the design and construction of your project. We can't buy right of way, and if you're crossing a railroad, you already have to have your agreement with them. But $3.5 million is available annually. We don't always get $500,000 applications. Sometimes it's in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. So we fund quite a few projects every year across the state. The picture here is one from Moscow. That was one of the first years that LTAC got involved. That was one of the first projects I worked on. And it's a underpass under the state highway, and it connects the bike path on either side of the road. And it's been a huge success. The city is really happy with it. They did a big ribbon cutting. They already have a pretty extensive bike community, and this really enhanced their system and connectivity and making it safer. The applications are scored by the TAP committee, which includes Cynthia. So they really do try to get people from the Office of Safety, from ITD planning group, from LTAC, from the Idaho Walk Bike, to help get a diverse group of people reviewing and scoring these applications. We use all of the money every year. ITD has done a really good job recently in planning for all $3.5 million and executing all of those funds. You know, for whatever reason, sometimes projects fall out, you know, whether they decide they're going to do local funds instead or whatever, lots of reasons. They always have projects in the wings ready to go to advance to make sure that we use all of that money, because it is so precious. You know, of all the funds in the state, there's almost nothing. This is the only dedicated funding source for infrastructure for bike ped. So ITD has done a really good job being an excellent partner in spending all of that money on improvements for bike ped projects. It can be local or on state highways, it doesn't matter. So it can be a sidewalk to a school in a neighborhood, or it could be a lot like this one in Moscow underneath a state highway. So it really just depends on what your need is in your jurisdiction. Any other questions on TAP before I move on to the next topic?
I guess again, do you know why no right-of-way is allowed, even though there's no other federal program I know of in Idaho, and that's not a federal TAP rule?
Yeah, so right-of-way isn't allowed because it really has issues with making the program unstable. With not owning the right-of-way, that can be a very lengthy process, especially since we cannot condemn or force right-of-way to be purchased for a bike or ped project. It can take a year to 2 years to purchase right-of-way. And with such a small program, it really becomes difficult if you want to spend all of the money every year. When you have unknowns like having right-of-way, it really becomes more unstable. And the further you get in the year, you know, say we're about to start October 1 is the beginning of the new federal fiscal year. The further we get into that fiscal year and the more projects that have been started and are going, if a project has to delay, it's such a small program, there's not a lot that we can advance to move forward if we do have a delay and we cannot obligate. And the reason why that's hard is we cannot obligate, and I know that's a federal word that means a lot of things that may not make sense, but basically we cannot advertise for construction without right-of-way being complete. So because it's such a small program, we tend to put the design in year 1 and the construction in year 2. So if design is not complete in year 1 and we're not able to obligate the construction in year 2, then we just kind of jeopardize the stability of the program and being able to use that money. Having a project of that same size that can slip into that spot that's ready to obligate, it's just too small of a program to accommodate that. I know that the TAP TMA gets some TAP funding, and they do right now allow right-of-way to be purchased. And that has been pretty difficult on them. As just an example, like they have a project right now that has had to delay 3 or 4 years because they're having trouble with, you know, HUD is involved and they're trying to do a land swap, and it's very time consuming. So because of all that, and it is such a competitive program, they just, the TAP, and it's an ITD memo, so it's an ITD policy not to allow right-of-way to be purchased.
Amanda, if I may just pipe in for a second, just so for those of you that have applied for TAP funding and have not been awarded your grant, $3.5 million goes very, very quickly, and that we get so many applications. We get, I think it's around $12 million worth of applications a year. And so it is incredibly competitive. And so you have to be well prepared when you submit your application. And the other thing is, Amanda, just briefly explain TAP TMA, just so people know what you're talking about.
Sure. So there's a transportation management area, and that's, I think, the only TMA. Someone on the call might correct me. So if I'm wrong, someone can jump in. But I believe the Compass in Boise has the only TMA in the state. So basically, they get a separate dedicated funds that can only be spent within the TMA, the transportation management area. So basically, they're getting rewarded for having such a dense urbanized area with a lot of pedestrian and bikers and people close together. They have and it's very little. I want to say it's like $300,000 or less, $200,000 a year. That's dedicated TAP funding just for the TMA. So some of the jurisdictions in that area that I know, you can double dip. So I know CUNA has done that, and the city of Eagle, where they apply for TAP funding through ITD, and we call that state TAP, and that's the $3.5 million that we go out for applications. And then they've also applied, since they're within the TMA, they can get some funding through Compass. And so it's just a little bit more money that the feds give to transportation management areas to help offset a lot of the issues that come up with being in an urban area.
I have one question. You mentioned several times that it is a small program. Do you think that there is a possibility that in the future it will be expanded? Because COVID, people started biking.
I know, trained by a bike right now.
So I wonder if that has an influence.
So all of it comes from the federal transportation bill. Idaho has zero control over how much money we get. It all comes from Congress and what they put. So the FAST Act is about to expire. We will perhaps see a whole new program with another transportation bill, unless there's a continuing resolution where they just say, we'll do the same thing we did last year. But in the past, this program has been known as community choices. And, you know, every transportation bill has different names, or, you know, depending on who the administration is, what their slant is on transportation, you know, maybe more for bikes and peds, or maybe more for rural, maybe more for bridges. We really don't know yet. We've heard a lot of rumors that TAP could triple in size this year. We're optimistic. We really don't know. There's been a lot of drafts floating around that we've been watching, but until we see a bill that's passed, then it's a crystal ball at this point. Do you have more insight, Sarah? What's your crystal ball say?
That was my applause for tripling the funding.
Yes. I mean, that's one. I mean, it just really depends on what comes out of DC. We are fairly confident that there will still be a program like TAP. You know, it might not be called that, but at this point, ITD, because like I told you, we put in applications for several years in the future. Even if there's no TAP program, ITD has said, we've already accepted these projects. We're committed to getting those built. So I feel pretty comfortable that no matter what happens through 2023, we'll be able to build those projects. And then between now and then, whatever happens with the new transportation bill, we'll adjust for the next application cycle. And hopefully it's a lot more money. That's what we all can hope for.
So Amanda, just to interrupt for a second, I just want to read something that Carl Whaley, who has spent a significant amount of time living abroad I think, Carl, you lived in the Netherlands, but I'm not sure. But if it wasn't the Netherlands, it was a country like that where you could get everywhere by bike. And this is what he said. The Netherlands program comparable to TAP amounts to $35 per person per year. If the same value was applied to Idaho TAP, we would have $61 million per year for these projects. So
imagine that.
Think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think another way to look at it is we know that bicyclists and pedestrians are like 8% of the state's traffic fatalities. So if safety is the top priority, 8% of the state DOT's budget would go toward those.
Yeah.
And it's not to mention the LTAC. I think for the advocates out there, the big advocacy issue, you can see in these programs, there's been a double standard applied to bicyclists and pedestrians that they don't apply to projects for roads. And it sounds like our state FHWA office has been okay with that. I think that's the overarching advocacy challenge that we have. Another one, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is if there's a project overrun on a TAP project, the municipalities are on the hook for that versus ITD can tap their own programs for overruns on ITD projects. There's another double standard in there. It's why addressing these is so hard, especially if we don't have the state FHWA office behind us, which we found on the chin widening and lack of sidewalk projects, that even the state FHWA office wasn't willing to apply federal guidance on that. That's the overarching challenge. That's why I've asked those questions. I know you're trying to just kind of be the messenger, Amanda, so I wanted to explain.
Yeah, and LTAC doesn't own this program. We administer the projects on the local system. So like Cynthia said, we get $12 million worth of applications. ITD has said in the past, I think the actual memo says there's supposed to be a certain split between ITD and local. But ITD has been pretty generous in saying, whatever the top scoring projects are, we'll fund from the top down, regardless of whether they're on the local system or the state highways. And as it comes out, it's like 90% are on the local system. So it ends up being mostly and it just is based on what gets applied. You know, whatever's the top priority in your jurisdiction that your jurisdiction applies for is what they put in. So we only administer the program. We have to follow ITD's rules. And ever since we got involved, we've been working really hard to try to soften that and allow there to be more flexibility in covering overruns. So far it's been unsuccessful. What we did do this last application cycle was, when you're putting the application estimate together, to include a substantial contingency so that if you do need more money, you hopefully covered in a 20 to 30% contingency that you put in. It does mean the overall size of the project would have to be a little smaller because the cap is still $500,000, but we're trying to help prevent that from happening, because it did, you know, for a little while there in 2018 and 19, bid prices were really high. The jurisdictions had put their applications in, you know, 3 or 4 years before. So they're trying to guess in the future what construction prices are going to be. And so it was pretty difficult. You either have to cut the size of the project, or the city or county or whoever the sponsor is has to pay the difference. And in many cases, not very many jurisdictions can come up with $50,000, which in construction dollars is not a whole lot, to cover any construction overruns or change orders or bid prices that are high. So the way that we're trying to work within ITD's restrictions is just to counsel all the applicants a lot ahead of time, which I reviewed every single estimate that came in a month before the deadline or 2 months before, to give some feedback on how much of a gut feeling I had on whether that was a good estimate, and then to allow them to include a 20 to 30% contingency so that we don't have that situation where the local is having to come up with funds or cut their project. But LTAC, we're just a partner. We have to work within ITD's guidelines on this. It's an ITD program, and they have a manual that we have to follow.
Amanda, this is Gary Seegers. I have a question.
Hi, sure.
The third bullet, must own all the right-of-way. I represent a nonprofit that is interested in building facilities off of pathways and green belts. But if we only have the easement from the jurisdiction that owns the property, does that constitute us not being able to apply for a TAP fund?
Nope, that would be okay. If you have an easement, if you have a signed agreement with whoever owns it, and you can include a letter of support from the owner of the right-of-way, that would absolutely satisfy.
Great, thanks for the answer.
Okay, so $3.5 million a year statewide. We administer about 90% of the projects. LTAC does, just because most of them end up being on the local system. Okay, so that's the only infrastructure funding. We're gonna move and switch gears a little bit toward equipment loaners. This has come up quite a bit in our meeting we had a month or so ago with all of the Safe Routes to School coordinators. on, you know, how do we get better counts and how do we know how many people are walking and biking to school, because that's becoming more important, you know, having that data. Everything is data driven now, and what's the easiest way to get information on where your bikers and pedestrians are in your area. So LTAC has been collaborating with Cynthia and Idaho Walk Bike to purchase through grants some of these newer technologies. So we have more standard ones like the JMAR, that can be used for bikes and peds or for cars, but it works really well for both. And then we have 2 newer technologies. So I'm going to touch on each one. So the JMAR one, we have 3 of these that we loan out. The pros are, it's really easy to turn this into data. You know, it's all electronic. You're punching the numbers as you see them. It transports really well to Excel, so you can have data at your fingertips pretty quickly. You can count bikes and peds separately, so you can have one person keeping track of both of those at the same time. It's fairly reliable, and you can do an entire intersection. You know, so if you have, depending on how busy it is, you know, I've stood at Bannock and 8th Street before at lunchtime, and there's no way you could probably do all that. But, you know, for most of the intersections in Idaho, this is very adequate, you know, and you can pretty easily capture, you know, an entire hour accurately. The cons is you have to have a person physically standing on the corner the entire time. So if it's not great for long term, you know, multiple days in a row, unless you have a whole bunch of volunteers that want to go stand on a corner and count people walking and biking. What would you say the demand for these are, Cynthia? Do you get a lot of requests for these?
We've gotten one request for this so far, and so this is fairly manual. Like Amanda said, you do have to stand out on a location and count. But what we're trying to do was come up with a system that can save steps. So we will loan a laptop with this counter because the drivers had to be loaded, and it's a little bit complex sort of on the back end, but it will save you from having to actually then take your handwritten sheet, which is what we've been using with your little tick marks, and put those into an Excel spreadsheet. This automatically dumps the data into Excel.
Yeah. So that's this first type. The second one, we have one of these. It's brand new. I don't know how long we've had it, even a couple of months. I think February we got them. And it uses infrared technology, which I kind of dove into the manual today as I was getting ready, and it's pretty intense. It can tell what direction people are traveling. It's battery operated, and it says it lasts up to 10 years on a battery. So that's quite a long time. And it detects bikes and peds with their body temperature. So I know one question I had was, how well can you sync it up to your location to make sure it's not, you know, collecting data outside of the area you want it to. And it does its own auto calibration for your location. So the only con I could see is that you can only get one location. So it wouldn't work at an intersection. You know, it's not going to count all 4 corners or anything. But if you're trying to get the number of kids going to school, you know, it could work really well if you put it in one location for a week and then, or a day, and then switch it to the other side of the road, or, you know, another quadrant of the road, and just keep moving it. So we have one of these. I think it immediately went to Idaho Falls, and it's been there since then. They've had trouble because it's hard to count kids walking to school when everyone's home for COVID. So I don't know that we've advertised it a whole lot yet that we have it, but this is available. And I don't know, Cynthia, how long are we loaning it out for at a time? Is it until there's another person requesting it?
So I would like to keep these at least 30 days in locations, longer if possible. And we'll just have to see what the demand is. But we got 3 different types of counters to handle 3 different types of locations. This is a good one for like trails and pathways and places like that. But Idaho Falls hasn't been able to use it. So I hope that they can use it this fall, and then we can get it back from them and loan it to somebody else.
Okay. That's this one. And the last one we have 5 of these. They're infrared and motion activated cameras. So you set it out, and what's nice is you don't have to have someone physically standing on the corner counting or on the side of the road, but you still have to have someone that watches the video later. You can speed it up so you can watch it on super high speed. It is motion activated, so it's not recording when it's not detecting anybody in the area, so that hopefully cuts down on the amount of video you have to watch. But that is a con, is that you have to have someone go watch a lot of video. But we do have a lot of these, and I don't know if we've loaned any out yet. I think they just came in.
Yeah, I just picked these up last week. I know one community is interested in these. So I'm hoping to deliver these the next time I go north. But don't know. I don't know yet. And again, everything is sort of, we're in that weird zone right now where kids aren't, but now they're starting to go back to school. So hopefully we can get some of these out and get counting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we loan a lot of other equipment. We have speed guns that you can rent. We've got car, tubes and infrared ones. So we have quite a bit of equipment that we loan out across the state. But it's really nice to partner with Cynthia and get some specific for bike ped. And then kind of to wrap up, LTAC does a lot of technical assistance. So if you have an issue in your area and you just need help workshopping what solutions might be, whether that's, what type of signage do I need, or what speed limit should this be set at, and why, or have questions on why something is set the way it is, we have one phone number at our office. It's on this slide, and you kind of just talk about your question. I want information on this, and they'll direct you to someone that can answer your question, or you can ask for me or whoever specifically, and they'll direct it to you. But that's really a big part of our mission, is not just administering federal dollars. That's a lot of what we do, but a big part is helping with technical assistance and answering questions. So don't feel shy in reaching out and calling. I know we talk to Cynthia all the time. It's great. Like we run into each other a lot. She's in our office a lot. We all know her. And it's been really good to help each other see what opportunities are out there and help take it further. So with that, I can wrap up. Man, I thought it was going to be like 30 minutes, and now it's already been almost an hour. You were right, Cynthia.
It's always like that, Amanda.
It's always like that. I was like, I don't have very many
going. We
yeah.
have 5 minutes. Does anybody have any questions for Amanda? Or I don't know if Layla's still here, but.
I have again a question, sorry. I was talking with Chief Lee, our new chief in Boise, and I talked with him about together neighborhood associations together with the police applying for grants to get speed monitors, because we have only one speed monitor for the entire city if neighborhood association wants to monitor the speed. And he said these speed monitors are not very effective. What is more effective is actually something that takes a picture of the car driving fast. So he said, you're welcome to apply for a grant for that. And my idea was, like, for example, 10 machines like that, and rotate throughout Boise in the neighborhood streets. And yeah. Is this something that, because in the beginning you said something about it is statewide and it is only for small, is this
rural?
Rural small cities and rural cities, is this something that you would do?
So it doesn't sound like it would qualify for the ones I talked about in this presentation, but I know that ITD's Office of Highway Safety does have a fairly robust grant system that work with police good. Quite a bit. So if that is something you're interested in, Cynthia, maybe I can get your email and I can email you a contact for who to reach out to and ask that question. I don't think it would apply to any that we give out, but I know that ITD has a grant program, and it sounds like it might qualify for that. So I can connect you there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great question. Anybody else have a question for Amanda while we have her here? I'm curious, Amanda, how does LTAC define a rural community?
That's based on the census. I'm not an expert on it. Is someone on the call an expert on the census stuff? Too bad Compass isn't here because they usually are. Is it 200,000 for urbanized area?
So it is based on the census. This is Layla again. It is based on the census. So we don't pick. ITD doesn't get to pick what rural and urban means. And it's even a little more confusing than just city size because they look at the area, not just the city. So let me try to think of one. The Kimberly area is, well, that's not the best one. I'm trying to think of two that are together. Haley and Bellevue. Haley and Bellevue together are an urban area because of the density within these concentric circles that are drawn through the compass process, through the, census process.
Census, yeah.
So it's 5,000 is what designates urban. But again, it's not just a city size, it is by these concentric circles and the area as a whole.
This is Ken Konovnik, the planning manager at ITD. I'll put that, so when that comes up, we will be updating those urban boundaries when that comes out. It's not 100% dictated by the census. There is a little bit of methodology to it on what that urbanized area is. You can exclude through jurisdictional boundaries. So for example, a lot of people don't realize that Compass is actually 2 MPOs. The Nampa Caldwell metropolitan area is a different metropolitan area than the Boise metropolitan area. They just join those for one agency. And so for example, if we look into that same Magic Valley area, Kimberly could potentially be part of the Twin Falls metropolitan, but we're not 100% required to do it that way. Well, Kim, that one might be, I guess the better one would be anything north outside of Twin Falls County. If they're in, they gotta be, you have to look at jurisdictional boundaries. So, and city boundaries aren't the same as county boundaries.
Thanks, Ken. That was a good explanation. I expect we're going to see some changes with the next census results. So we'll see things change in our state.